There's another part of the brain, besides the left and right brain, the prefrontal cortex, or the frontal lobes, right behind your forehead. And I'm not going to get too scientific, so don't worry about that. But through there are cognitive functions that every person has. And these functions, by the time you reach adulthood, around 21 or 22 years old, they're basically fixed. So there are certain characteristics that we all have, everybody, this is everybody, that are not changeable. And when you first hear about this, it's like, well, yeah, that's fine, but I can fix this. Well, you really can't, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I'd like you to think of a person, and this could be yourself or someone else you know, who's always on time for everything. See that person? Now I'd like you to think of another person who's never on time. And you know what that looks like. Now I'd like you to think of another person, again, this could be yourself, who, when you talk to them after about 5 minutes, you know they're thinking about something else, even though you're talking to them about a specific subject. They've really kind of drifted off into something else. Now I'd like you to think of another person who you say something and it bothers them for the rest of the day. And it doesn't bother you, because you're probably high in that skill. These are cognitive functions. They're fixed skills. They're called executive skills. It has nothing to do with executives. It's called executive skills. They were named executive skills in the 80s by clinical psychologists. And what I'm going to talk about today is based on 40 years of neuroscience brain research. It's not a theory. Everything I'm going to tell you is clinically, all clinical psychologists, anyone here who's in HR and psychology, you know about these things, and it won't be new to you. What we did is we converted this for normal people like yourselves. We took everything that's known in clinical psychology, and we converted it for business people. Because it turns out this stuff is actually very, very relevant to what people do in business. The first one is self-restraint. Now, this is in order that psychologists believe they are developed from birth. Self-restraint is the ability to basically think before you speak. So you don't just blurt something out. You think before you speak. Now, this is developed, they believe, in babies between 2 and 8 months old. When you make a face at a baby, the baby makes a face back. You make another face, they make a face back. You make another face, and they don't make the same face back. Psychologists believe that's the first development of the skill of self-restraint. And again, this is hardwired from birth. And this is, by the way, it's based on how neurons actually fire in the brain. Everything from your left and right brain goes through your frontal lobes. The second one is working memory. This is the ability, it's not just to be able to remember things, this is the ability to remember things when a lot of things are going on. So that your memory is basically always on. So that someone says, do this, this, and this, when you've done that, do this. And if you're high in working memory, you remember that last this. This would be, if you're low in this, when someone says, and before you come home, make sure you go to the store and do this. This is another one of my lows. So I go to the store. I remember to go to the store, but I forget what I'm supposed to get. So I buy a pile of stuff, hoping one of them was it. And it never is. But sooner or later, percentage-wise, I'm going to end up with something that we're supposed to get. Emotion control, this is the ability to remain cool and calm under conditions where something occurs. You can compartmentalize your emotions, essentially. Say, I can't deal with this now, I'll deal with it later. Focus, this is the ability to stay on a task and avoid distractibility. And everyone knows someone who's low in focus. And Bob remembers this. We had a question from a CFO at the CFO conference I spoke at in Orlando. And the CFO asked, he said, what do you do if your boss, my CEO, is really low in focus? I said, we better talk about this after, which we did. And he said, I said, what does it look like? He said, well, I go in and I've got like this hour meeting, and I know after 5 minutes he's really not listening to me. I keep talking. I said, well, that's really effective. And he said, what do I do? I said, get everything you want done in the first 5 minutes, number one. Number two, don't do a 1 hour meeting with someone who's low in focus. It's useless. He said, he doesn't read my emails either. I said, I bet they're long, aren't they? He said, well, yeah, I put everything in it. I said, you can't do that. Short, quick emails. Oh, you think that'll work? Well, duh, yeah, that'll work. And he let me know it is, in fact, working. Task initiation, this is the ability, and these are natural abilities to start a task with undue procrastination. So if you're high in task initiation, when someone gives you something to do, or you know someone who's high in task initiation, you give something to do, they do it right away, they start it right away. And you know what that looks like. And you know what the low looks like as well. Planning prioritization, this is the ability to basically very naturally create a roadmap. So if you were high in planning prioritization and you were going to, say, Universal theme park, you would very naturally in advance plan every ride you're going to go on before you get there. And if you're low on it, you finish the day and say, gee, I missed all the good rides. Organization, this is the ability to very naturally have everything has a place. So you very naturally put things, everything in your brain, everything has its location. And these skills, by the way, everyone has highs, everyone has lows. It doesn't matter. The issue is to play to your strengths, not try to fix your weaknesses because you're really wasting time, which is what we all do, by the way, in business. We try to fix people's weaknesses. Time management is the very natural ability to have a sense that time is important. The way I'm low in time management, so what it looks like for me is we'll be driving along, and my wife's high in it. My son will call and say, when are you going to be there? And I say, 45 minutes. And my wife says, an hour and a half. And we get there in an hour and a half. And I know I could have made it in 45 minutes. Next time, the same thing happens. It's like 45 minutes, I'm going to go faster this time, and it's still an hour and a half. But because now I know this, and I know how my brain works, I say 45 minutes, and I add 50% intellectually. Bang, I'm always on time now. But it's not because of my brain, it's because of kind of the rest of me saying, okay, that's what my brain thinks is going to take, so I know it always takes longer, so I add 50%. It turns out I'm off by 50% pretty consistently. I tried 40%, I tried 80%, this is 50%. So that's where my brain calculates. Defining and achieving goals, this is the ability to have a long-term objective or goal, a long-term project, and always hit it. You always get to it. This is one of my personal highs, which is why I've done 7 books and I've hit the deadline on every single one. Now, publishers are used to people who are low in this, so they actually build in a 1-month window. So you turn in the book and they don't read it for a month because they expect you're going to be a month late anyway, which drives me absolutely crazy because I naturally hit the deadline and I never knew why, and this is why. Flexibility, this basically is the ability to have someone else's agenda replace yours and you're okay with it. You can really kind of go with the flow. And there are typical opposites. Typically, not always. In psychology, nothing is ever always, which I find a wild concept in itself. Nothing is ever always. How can nothing ever be not always? Logically, it doesn't make sense. But that's what they say in psychology. Nothing is ever always. But typically, if you're high in flexibility, you're low in time management, and vice versa. Observation. My guess is there are a lot of you who are high in observation, especially the top executives. This is the ability very naturally to step back and say, how did I do that? How can I do it better next time? How did we do this? Let's review and think of how we can do this better next time. If you're low in observation, it's very natural to not do that, so you keep making the same mistake over and over again. And last, stress tolerance. This basically is taking stress and pressure in stride. It's actually very natural for you. And I know some of you are high in stress tolerance. Probably, my guess is the people who are running this meeting, a lot of the people in the organization of the committee, my guess is a lot of them are high in stress tolerance because you don't hear people screaming. Did anybody hear anybody screaming? And I saw what you probably don't see what goes on behind the scenes. There's a lot behind the scenes here. It doesn't look it because they're high in stress tolerance, so it doesn't come out. If you're high in emotion control, you're not easily sidetracked. You can actually compartmentalize your emotions. And if you're low, you're very sensitive. If someone is low in emotion control, say that's their low, and you walk in and you say to them, your report was due yesterday, and then you go off to your other thing. Well, that person all day, I'm going to get fired. I'm such a loser. Boy. And finally, like 4 or 5 hours later, someone says, what's bothering you? The boss really chewed me out today. Why? My reports are always late. I don't think I'm going to make it. I'm going to get killed in my review. It's just awful. What did he say? He said your report was a day late. That's it? He told me mine was a week late. What's the big deal? So when you see someone bothered, it could be something that someone said, and they never give it another thought. Like, you took my parking place. Whatever. It's like, he hates me. I take his parking place. He probably thinks I do this intentionally all the time. What am I going to do? And that really goes through people's minds. I have a student her highest skill is time management, and her lowest is emotion control. And she said whenever she's late, like by 2 minutes, she gets really upset at herself, even though no one else cares that she's late. Like she gets emotional about it because she's so high and she didn't hit her very natural skill, so it bothers her. Like she was saying, she was late for something by 2 minutes. 2 minutes.